I think Dusty had a knack for knowing when it's time. Probably one of the hardest decisions he made, and I think definitely the most important decision he made, was when he decided to leave Dick. He worshipped Dick Murdoch, if you will, baby. That's what I call getting a dream, holding on to it, and shooting for the sky. I'm John Renton with my review WWE on A&E Biography, WWE Legends on Dusty Rhodes, the American Dream, the son of a plumber that came out of the ditch at 8 years old and became so sweet. I'm going to try to keep the Dusty impressions to a minimum. This was a pretty damn good edition, episode, whatever you want to call it, of WWE on A&E Biography. Though, of course, revisionist history, a lot of revisionist history. But Dusty Rhodes, is he one of the greatest to ever do it? It would be hard to argue against it. Like, he had a lot of really great ideas. He had some ideas creatively that didn't work. But he had so many that did work, and the captivating promos and the charisma in the ring, the physical charisma, he made you believe whenever he was in pain, because often he was, and the blood and the violence and the fact that he could get the most out of some opponents that honestly really weren't even up to snuff. I mean, there are some that I'm going to talk about here, but Dusty Rhodes, truly one of the most iconic wrestlers, performers, whatever word you want. I mean, he was both, because he could go out there and wrestle for an hour, and he was a tremendous performer. Sports entertainment. He got sports entertainment in a way that a lot of people at that time did. Now, I'm not saying there weren't ones before him that didn't get it. I'm not saying that there weren't ones during his heyday that didn't get it. But Dusty truly was one of a kind. So let me know your thoughts on this episode in the comments, please. There was a lot of Cody and Dustin and a lot about his kids here, which did tie into the whole thing about him being the American Dream and traveling the world and doing all that stuff and everything. It was good stuff. There were a few heavy moments in this particular episode. So we open with Mania 38 clips. The fans wanted to see Cody. The mother talks to Cody, Michelle, and that's Dusty's second wife. We hear a lot from her here. She was a great talking head here. Definitely good that they got her on film before her pass. It's just tough. It's just tough seeing footage of people that have passed. It is. It was like, that was the eerie thing about seeing some of the stuff, like, in past episodes, like of Lance Russell and so many of these people. And on the periphery, and Michelle was with Dusty through a lot. And they talk about that here. And just, thinking that, I mean, at least they're reunited. At least there's that. If you believe in that stuff, they're reunited. I mean, how many years they spent together. But Cody mentions that he's avoided the specter of Dusty during his career and, since he passed. Okay, Cody, whatever you say. Sure. I mean, he's got to carve his own goddamn path, but come on. Come on. Really? So that being said, I'm not. This is not going to turn into dumping on Cody. I'm just saying, there are sometimes he says certain things in interviews, taped or live, where I'm like, really? So anyway, clips of Dusty all over the world, how beloved he was. His growing up, they didn't mention, I forget what it was, but it was something in his hip. It was some kind of bone-on-bone thing in his hip. I don't remember what it was. It was mentioned in, I think, the 2006 or 7 documentary that WWE did that really was rushed. And actually, if you think about it, when you take the commercials out of this one was about as long as that, but this one covered more stuff. Larry Runnels, Dusty's brother, it was great that they got him here for this, because he got to tie a whole lot of stuff as far as his growing up, parents, and all that. It was really good that they got him involved. He was great, very personable, provided a lot of great insight. And we get 2014 Dusty clips, interview clips, that is, because that was pretty much like one of the last on-camera appearances he made. I think he did on-camera stuff for the Clash of Champions DVD set that they did. And I believe one of the last things he said, I think it was for the Clash of Champions one, but, until we meet again, happy trails to you. It's like, and you got to think about when that came out, that was, I believe that came out in 2015, and Dusty passed in June of 2015. His oldest daughter talks. she provides some good insight as well. He does it. We see some old Dusty clips and even some new ones. But his dad said, if you're going to do it right. Mentioned going to wrestling on Fridays. My dad, he'd take me with him. We'd go get some chicken fried steak, some iced tea, cash his check, and we'd go to wrestling. And thinking about where Dusty grew up and how old he was, this was coming out of the Great Depression. It's not that his parents didn't come from anything, but his parents did struggle. And that's something where the American dream stuff came up. And his dad being a plumber, and his dad knew that he could do something else. It's not that he didn't think his son couldn't do that, but he's like, I want you to do something else other than this. He played sports, baseball, football. I do remember it was a Legends of Roundtable discussion. He hit a home run. I think it was against Texas Christian University, and they were all giving him holding the one finger in the air or whatever, but it was, of course, the pickle finger. It's like, these are Christians. Again, trying to keep the Dusty impressions to a minimum. But his match with Fritz von Erich, that was in 1968. He was hooked. And he actually did tell a story, and this was about Texas wrestling or Southern wrestling. One of the two episodes. Watch them both on Peacock, the Legends of Wrestling Roundtable. But he mentioned how, I'll tell this story really briefly, how his dad had died. I think Dustin was born in the morning, his dad died in the evening, something like that. It was, maybe I'm swapping those. But born and, new life and death, and it just, Dusty's dad really wanted to be a grandfather, and I mean, in retrospect, was able. That's just really sad. It's an unfortunate series of circumstance and events. But Fritz had given him some money with cash, just giving him cash. Just said, here, you need something to help out. I want to help you out. And Dusty even said years later he came and he did that with interest, and he wanted to do that for Fritz because of what Fritz did for him. So a lot of people knock Fritz, and rightfully so, but that was something good. And that's where Dusty, yes, did do the giving back. And that was a nice story. I kind of wish they would have told, but it is what it is. Married his first wife, the road life, that got tough. He wasn't there for Dustin and his oldest daughter. They didn't show enough of him teaming with Dick Murdoch, the very clandestine individual Dick Murdoch was. I mean, come on. Just read up about Dick Murdoch. Great performer, but seriously, add a couple more Ks to Dick. Nevertheless, Dick Murdoch was definitely born to wrestle, and he was quite good. Quite good in the ring, at least. But, they didn't show a lot of that, and I'm a little bit... I don't know if it's because they didn't have that much footage, because they worked in Florida, and I believe Bill Watts even talked about, them teaming up and how they were box office. They teamed up in the AWA, and they were together for 4 or 5 years. Something like that. And it was somewhere around 73, I think, that Dusty went to Florida. 72, 73, somewhere around that. Before my time, and I'm trying to research this stuff. But then, of course, Dusty, he made the decision to leave Dick, but he worshipped Dick. I'm so fucking mature. It's unbelievable. How have I managed to make it to 42 with this mindset? But he went out on his own, went to prove himself, and his stuff in Florida. They messed around with a lot of footage, though, because he was in the AWA when it was clearly the late 70s. He was in the appearances in the Worldwide Wrestling Federation, appearances in Atlanta. A lot of this footage got all slammed together. I mean, this is a major collection of time periods where it's just... They didn't put graphics up of any of that stuff. Probably because they figured that some of the fans wouldn't give a shit, but eagle-eyed ones like me might notice that there's something a little bit off on the timeline. It was good to hear from Magnum TA. We have to wonder what Magnum TA's career would have been had that car accident not happened. And then a 1974 return against Paxson Nan. Or is it Man? Paxson Nan? Paxson. Whatever. I always screw that up. Gary Hart. I wish Gary Hart had been mentioned a little bit here. I mean, Gary Hart hadn't been here since 2010, 9 or 10. He wrote a book. Gary Hart wrote a book that's apparently really, really good, and I wish I could get a copy of it, but God, it's so expensive. But anyway, Hogan talked about imitating him. He took the finger thing from him, this kind of stuff when he's in a bear hug. Hogan stealing stuff from people, while I'm shocked to me, it's like nothing is wholly original. Of course, Hogan did it, and various others, whatever. He was, very over in Florida after the 1970s. I mean, he was over anyway as a heel, but then he was definitely over the face. I mean, he was the god. He was the god of Florida. It's not that there weren't others that were really goddamn good at that point. Dory Funk Jr., Jack Briscoe, various others. Vince is just being the interviewer and everything. The interviewer and the commentator. That yellow canary sports coat is just so funny. He really had to, I don't know if he had to work on his dad or his dad had to be convinced, but his dad likely respected Dusty. Vince Sr., that is. Series of superstar Billy Graham. And of course, Hogan's like, Dad, I want to be just like that guy, or maybe I want to be like that guy. Yeah, Hogan, we get it. I mean, you were there for every big moment, and you wrestled 400 days in a year because you crossed the time zone line. Hogan's had such an amazing life. He doesn't need to insert himself into everything or everybody else's wife. But anyway, Dusty meeting celebrities, especially when he was in New York. And that series with Superstar Billy Graham was quite good. And that was when Billy Graham was pretty much at his hottest, and the last time he would ever really be that hot because he self-destructed, because he was a nut. And a prick. But Andy Warhol, speaking of nuts, I don't think he was a prick, he was just a nut. Michelle talking about meeting him in Florida, talking about possibly marrying him, but wanted to see how he was as a father. You can't marry a man that's a crappy father. And that's true. And Dusty mentioned how being a bad father, he felt he was a bad father, and that would be something that would haunt him. Beating Harley Race in August of 1979. Big pop. Dusty was a 3-time NWA champion, and I think his combined reigns were not even 100 days. I think it was 86. It might be 100, but I think it's more around the 80s, because I know he didn't have it for that long. And then get a dream, hold on to it, and shoot for the sky. Dusty Rhodes' promos, I mean, I guess if I mentioned all of Dusty Rhodes' promos and all the classic moments and matches and stuff like that he had, I'd be here for a goddamn hour. This had to be a 3-part video. I mean, this would be insane. Of course, Dusty Rhodes, absolutely captivating on the mic and in the ring. Until we got to about 87, and then it got a little dicey because of the injuries and all that. The early 80s expansion, because Vince bought it from his father, bought the company. Vince wanted Dusty. Dusty in New York would have been interesting. Dusty as the guy instead of Hogan? Would it have been Dusty Mania? Could have been. Because Dusty was sports entertainment enough. Dusty also liked to bleed. Dusty also liked to make stuff personal. Vince would have had to change everything about how he presented wrestling, or at least enough of it. Dusty was better off going to Crockett, but it would have been interesting in an alternative timeline to see how Dusty would have done in the Hogan spot. Do you think Dusty would have done well? I mean, I don't see how he couldn't have. Would it have been as insane as it was for Hogan? Probably not. But that's not to say it wouldn't have just been right like that because of how over Dusty was in the lineage he had. Because Hogan had only been in wrestling since 78, 9? Maybe 77? And had come off that pretty hot run in the AWA when Vern didn't give him the title and kept a whole bunch of his merch money when he was over in Japan, and Vern screwing his own business. Hooray! So anyway, Crockett, he leaves Florida. I mean, no mention about how Eddie Graham pretty much self-destructed by that point. And Dusty's great ideas, the Great American Bash, David Allen Coe with his insane amount of hair, Delbert McClinton in Philly, and a whole bunch of other stuff. The Great American Bash 1985 was in Charlotte, and then that gave him the idea to do tours. 1986, the War Games, Which War Games, back when War Games was good and you didn't need a bunch of weapons and goddamn bullshit. And you could have everybody bleed and you didn't have them go for about 18 million years. Go watch some of the older War Games. Seriously. Watch some of the ones from 87. Watch those. Watch even up to Fall Brawl 96. Not all War Games are great. Fall Brawl 94, less so. That wasn't great. Colonel Rob Parker, likely, maybe, possibly, covering my ass here, crapping his pants. Maybe. But anyway, the whole point is that Dusty, again, covering all his, run would take forever, but the Dusty Flair rivalry got a lot of coverage here. The promos, the insanity, the heat. David Crockett only got to chime in a little bit on this. I wish they had gotten Jim Crockett Jr. to be part of this. Or he died a couple years ago, but if they had gotten older footage or whatever, just use older footage, because I wanted to hear from Jim Crockett Jr. Starrcade 84, that fuck finish with the, the stoppage for blood, the $1 Million Challenge. Dusty, looked at wrestling like a movie, and that ended up kind of biting him in the ass with stuff like Chamber of Horrors. The switch continued to fall down. This great vision that I had wasn't exactly going like I planned. And then Horseman turning on Dusty in the cage, which... Was it the Russians that were in there? Was it the Russians? I'm trying to remember. I think it was. But they were... I want to say they were at the Omni. I might be confusing that with the Ole and Dusty thing. It will never be over Ole Anderson. But they lock the cage for beating the shit out of Dusty, and they break his leg. And then Dustin finds out, that the cast has slit down it, and that's how he found out the wrestling was a work, and he had to be smartened up like that. Because Dusty kayfabed his own kids. Not cruelly, like Grizzly Smith, by the way. Yeah, fuck Grizzly Smith. I just want to say that right here on this video. But the turn on Dusty, 4 horsemen being 4. And they had talked, there were fans standing up. They were surrounding the ring. And there were fans that were like, okay, there's more of us than there are them. That was scary. That was scary looking at that shit. That's how you know you really have the people. You really have just drawn them into where they want to kill you. I mean, yeah, everybody wants to make it where you have people want to kill you. That's great. That's great. That actually proves that you were doing wrestling right, by the way. And then the Hard Times promo. You don't know what hard times are. Hard times are when a man's worked at a job for 30 years. They kick him in the butt, give him a watch, and say, a computer took your job. I probably flipped those around. I'm sorry. But Dusty wasn't the best father to his kids. That is mentioned quite a bit here. He had his issues because he was always on the road. The Flair Dusty footage, then more Flair Dusty footage, beating Flair at Great American Bash 1986 on July 26th for the title. That didn't last all that long, and Flair won it back pretty soon after. And then Bruce talked about, the Jim Crockett promotions didn't, nobody in New York knew who Jim Crockett was. People in New York did know who Jim Crockett was. See, the thing is, the TV was actually really competitive, and, the ratings and stuff like that, and there were competitive parts of the market and everything, but Vince was just smart with the people that he put together, the infrastructure, the business structure, and Jim Crockett didn't have that, even though I believe they grossed, according to Cornette's podcast, he was there, $21 million in 1986, and Crockett, had he been smarter, had Dusty been reeled back also a bit from booking a lot of this stuff to where they're running too many stadiums. Had they run a few less stadiums in 86, a few less stadiums in 87 and 88, and run run bigger arenas but not stadiums, even though it's a great visual, the overhead probably would have been a whole lot better, and also maybe not buying a championship wrestling from Florida, Kansas City, the UWF for $4 million goddamn dollars when it was worth $100,000. No, it's probably worth $1 million. But no mention of Vince creating Survivor Series 87 to mess with Starrcade. No mention of the Bunkhouse Stampede and the Royal Rumble head-to-head. Granted, the Bunkhouse Stampede didn't need any help being shot in the foot because that thing damaged his foot more than Kerry Von Erich on June 4th, 1986. I mean, that thing was just fucked from the beginning. But yeah, Vince playing dirty and everything, threatening the cable companies. Oh no, you won't get WrestleMania, or the pay-per-view companies, right? You won't get WrestleMania if you carry Crockett's show. Not realizing that if he did that, he'd be costing himself money, but they were stupid. And there was a bunch of stuff like that. Like pay-per-view revenue would have helped. Then they mentioned, oh, Crockett sold to Turner. And then we get the Common Man gimmick. I do remember seeing a bit of Dusty near the end of the Crockett run because they had syndicated programming, and at the time I saw some of the syndicated programming. I also saw, especially, with some of my friends that had cable, because up where I lived at the time, they weren't spreading cable that wide until the early 90s. Out kind of in the sticks here, just want to say. So the Common Man gimmick, the Plumber Man, the Pizza Man, all that, just having fun in the polka dots. And it wasn't a rib. I mean, Michelle said he didn't care because he shoved it back in their face. But Cody, it wasn't punishment. The fuck it wasn't, Cody. There is no way you're dumb enough to believe that. God damn it. But whatever. He's back in the company. Uh-huh. But Dusty threw it back in their goddamn face. But the polka dots thing, it wasn't punishment. Yeah, it was. Of course it fucking was. You would think that Vince and co. wouldn't have wanted to punish Dusty, considering how much money he helped draw for them with that program with superstar Billy Graham. But Vince, I'm going to make him work polka dots. Polka dots. It's such good shit, pal. God, no wonder Vince's voice is shot trying to do something like that. Dustin's debut, I believe he debuted in late 88. And then there was a Florida promotion that Dusty tried to run for a bit. He then went to WWF in the summer of 89. And I believe wrestled Honky Tonk Man at that SummerSlam. And he shoved it back in their face. They did show a little bit of footage of Sapphire. That was good. Apparently she was a really nice lady. It's just sad that Dusty's lone pay-per-view match, or let me try that again. His lone Mania match was a mixed tag match. That's all due respect to Sapphire. Rest in peace, Sherry. Liz is there. God, they're all gone. They're all fucking gone. Hogan's still around, and they're still here. That's mean. Warrior outlived them. Well, he didn't outlive Dusty. Fuck the Ultimate Warrior, by the way. Glad he's dead. Then Dusty goes back to WCW. Dustin comes with him. Headed creative in 91-93. No mention of Chamber of Horrors. I kind of wish I would have mentioned that. Or the White Castle of Fear strap match. Bill Watts doesn't get mentioned at all in this. I wonder why. Maybe because Bill Watts, even though he had some good ideas, kind of ran the TV into the goddamn ground. But Dusty then had a falling out with Dustin because Dustin chose Terry. This was sometime in 95 because this was mentioned in that 2007 Dusty documentary. Trying to remember it exactly. Dustin was going to take care of Terry. Dusty got upset because he wouldn't come play golf with him or something. I mean, I don't remember if that's the story or if this is a story they went with. Didn't talk to him for 5 years. Dustin wanted to kind of get out of the Dusty shadow. They gave him the Gold Dust gimmick. Was it a slap in the face? I mean, maybe. But you know what? It gave Dustin a lot of attention, and he made it his own. It wasn't as much... Could it have been a punishment like the polka dots? Sure. Dustin was able to supersede that. Then he mocked Dusty in early 98, which he said was a mistake. They just didn't pick up the phone. They didn't do this because there was a lot of stuff like that. Dusty felt that he wasn't the best father. And then we go to the Nightmare Factory, and then we see Slamboree 95 clips. Who told 8 to 9-year-old Cody that shirt was a good idea? Hall of Fame induction for the WCW Hall of Fame. Cody wanted to wrestle. Actually wanted to get into Hollywood, I think, and that didn't work. And then his WCW return, Dusty coming back to WCW. I mean, he'd been there in some capacity, but more of a return to prominence. Dustin returns as 7. I look like Uncle Fester. Thank you, Russo. You fucking idiot. Or whoever came up with that idea. But anyway, father-son reunite. I felt bad for Dustin. That was that was certainly an emotional part. And then Ron Simmons is WCW champion. I'm having to refer to my notes here because the timeline gets really off. How he did stuff for talent. The corporate environment didn't work for Dusty, and then he spent money like crazy because there will always be more money, but unfortunately, forgetting he had a family. I mean, it's not that he didn't take care of his kids, but he spent money like crazy. And Michelle went back to work basically to help support them. Went back to school to get to become a nurse or something like that. And the story, remember the promo where Heyman and Cody talked and Cody said, you gave my dad a job when we were on really, really hard times and you paid him well. Heyman, they mentioned about Heyman, it was Living Dangerously 2000 against Steve Corino. And I gave him his confidence back. And then WCW closed down. No mention of NWA TNA. How he was there for about 3 years off and on. And then Cody and Dustin induct him into the Hall of Fame. And Stephanie all glowing about hiring Dusty. Oh, yes, Dusty, we want you to come here. We want to keep you under our thumb because I'm more vindictive than my goddamn dad because I'm an evil bitch. I mean, look at Stephanie. Come on. Come on, folks. It's like her dad without the good qualities, at least as far as an on-screen performer. NXT coaching stint, being a grandfather, 2003 or 2013 Battleground. I forgot just how frail Dusty looked then. And I remember thinking, wow, jeez. Like, he doesn't look good. And that's not knocking. Obviously, he was sick, and that led to the sad part here a little later on. It's just really, I was just amazed. I mean, because he had lost some weight, and yeah, it was probably a good thing he lost some weight, but not with the way he did. And that was his last TV appearance, or at least pay-per-view appearance. Because then he stepped up to Triple H and Stephanie, and then he got kicked off the TV and shoved it back down to NXT. Various towns, Seth Rollins, Becky, and others talk about how they wouldn't be where they're at without Dusty. Because Dusty molded a lot of people. And then Magnum and others talk about seeing Dusty and how he didn't look great. Dusty wouldn't go to the doctor. And I remember him appearing on the pre-show for the 2015 Hall of Fame, and like, my God, I was just floored. And then I remember this vividly. I didn't remember all these details, but I remember his death and hearing the kids recount all this. Jesus. I mean, some kids couldn't even get there in time. I mean, that's just sad. And apparently the last thing he said was his wife's name, so I guess that was fitting. The 10 Bell Salute on NXT TV very soon after. Funeral footage, memories. There was a field with a bunch of longhorns that's kind of like it has a little shrine to him. And his ashes were sprinkled out there. And then Cody and Dustin, their schools and all that. And Cody's Mania return, family photos, and the Dusty Rhodes Foundation for Youth Sports. And no, I'm not saying Dusty was the perfect guy. I'm definitely not going to say that Dusty didn't have a lot of issues. Teddy Long spoke glowingly about him because Dusty saw a lot of potential in Teddy Long. But it's just really sad that Dusty is no longer here. Because think about how much better NXT could have been for a number of years with his influence if he was able to get, to keep his health in check. Yeah, he beat up his body and he partied a lot in his earlier days, and sure, all the bumps and bruises and various things add up, and we all age, but Dusty truly was one of a kind, and it's just, this documentary proved that, or biography proved that. I believe next week is on the Iron Sheik. That will be interesting. They're going to do 2 hours on the Iron Sheik. God, they don't talk a lot about his early life. That's going to be something, but in all seriousness, rest in peace, Dusty Rhodes. Truly one of the all-time greats. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Like, share, subscribe, Twitter handle in the description. I'm John Wetland. I'll see you soon.